So let's talk about felting a sweater. Are you familiar with that term when I use that? You are. Most of you are. Not everybody is. So felting a sweater by accident is what most people are familiar with. So maybe you have a really nice J. Crew sweater that you really, really like. This is just a friend of a friend that I'm talking about. And maybe that friend's husband wants to be really nice and wash the clothes, including the one sweater that you hung over the side of the hamper because you were going to take it to the dry cleaners. And maybe your sweater comes out looking like this, which looks like it would fit like an American Girl. This is a felted sweater. So basically, you've shrunk it. You've taken most of the stretch out of it. So this is not wearable anymore. You really can't stretch it. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of give anymore. But this is crafting gold. That's what you need to remember. So that is what felting a sweater is. Washing it, having it shrink to the point where it really can't shrink anymore. And to do this, you need to look at certain kinds of sweaters. So when you're in the thrift store, you're going to be looking at labels. For instance, it needs to be at least 80% animal fiber. Animal fiber like wool, alpaca, angora, cashmere, anything that's, wool, virgin wool, anything like that, that's probably going to felt. And if it's 80% or more, it will felt. Occasionally, you do get a sweater that is wool that will not felt, and that is because it has been treated with something in the yarn form that makes it machine washable. So that's kind of the chance you take. Most of them, that's kind of a fairly new type of process, so most of the time you're going to get a sweater that will felt if it's at least 80%. The ones that do not felt, that have really pretty yarns, but they still won't work, cotton, acrylic, nylon, rayon, metallic yarns, anything that is synthetic will not work. And you can usually, again, just you're going to be looking at the labels and just see, what they're made of, because those will not work. But most of the natural fibers will work. And here's another example of what happens. And so this was a men's sweater that I bought and threw it in the wash. And what happens is you're matting the wool fibers together. You're creating, rather than a knit or a crochet stitch, you're just creating this mesh of fibers. And so it's going to shrink. And this one actually changed color a little bit. It lightened up. But what happens too, if you cut into a felted sweater, it doesn't ravel. The edges don't ravel anymore. Whereas if you cut into a knitted sweater, you're going to catch a tail that's going to unravel. So that's what happens. But let's talk about how you do it. It couldn't be easier. You throw it in the washing machine. You want hot water. You want normal detergent. I mentioned shampoo because if you have an older washer, shampoo makes natural fiber sweaters really soft because you're dealing with an animal hair, like human hair, so it actually softens it. But if you're using a front loader, don't use that. You'll have bubbles coming out everywhere. So just use your normal detergent. And the way I do it is I put it in, I think I have a longer agitation setting that I put on mine, and I just let it go. And I'll set my phone to check it in 15 minutes, and I'll stop it, I'll look at it. You can tell when it's wet if it's matting together. And if it feels like it needs more time, I just reset it and then just go back. And so do that until you feel like you've gotten it, and then dry it in a hot dryer just to continue the felting process. I would not, if you come home with a lot of different sweaters in different colors from the thrift store, I wouldn't wash them together. Like for instance, I might wash these together, but I wouldn't put that in there, the red, and I wouldn't necessarily even wash these together because it creates a lot of little lint pieces, and those will kind of adhere to the top of this. So you might end up washing some sweaters by themselves, but that's okay. That's okay. So any questions on felting? It's like the easiest thing in the world, right? So let's get to the, yeah.
Sorry, before we go, are there certain fabrics or certain types of sweaters or whatever it is that you're looking for when you are shopping for those? Like certain colors, certain textures, or whether they're braided or
So when you're in the thrift store and you're looking for sweaters to felt, you can always find good wool sweaters with lots of usable fabric in the men's department. But those colors aren't usually as exciting as the ones in the women's department. So I look in both places, and you don't need a lot of felt for most of the projects that need felt, that need this sort of felted sweater wool. So you can get by with a smaller one, but like this is this is pretty indicative of what you would find in the men's area. This is a cashmere sweater that I found in the men's area. But then, you know, these are really great colors that you find in the women's area. So look in both. And the other thing I would recommend is look in the sweater section as it's labeled, but also look in the t-shirt section. Because a lot of times they will put, here's one I've been cutting into, but this is a cashmere sweater, but because they're so thin, sometimes they will put them in the t-shirt section. So look in the t-shirt section or the knit shirt section.
And side note, you have another class here on CreativeLive that is how to thrift shop.
How to thrift shop. We're going to take everybody through a thrift store. Yeah, because there's definitely a way to get the most out of it. And we'll talk about this sort of thing. Exactly.